This is an ABC News special report. Now reporting, David Muir.
And good afternoon. We come on the air at this hour because we are following rising tensions between the U.S. and Iran. In fact, just a short time ago at the Pentagon, this was audio only, but we did hear from the commander of the U.S. Air Force's Central Command in the region, Lieutenant General Joseph Guastella, who told reporters in the statement to the Pentagon briefing room that a Global Hawk drone was flying over the Gulf of Oman near the Strait of Hormuz. This was a U.S. Navy drone on a recent surveillance mission in international airspace in the vicinity of recent maritime attacks when it was shot down by a surface-to-air missile fired from a location, and this is significant, he said, in the vicinity of Gork, Iran, from Iran. That is something Iran disputes. They do not dispute the drone coming down, but they do say that drone was over Iran and not over international airspace. I want to get right to Mary Bruce. Quickly, Mary, you asked the president moments ago, would we be taking action against Iran? And he was very quick with his answer.
Well, the president said that we would be hearing something more soon. We know that he has just been meeting with Justin Trudeau of Canada in the Oval Office, and he was asked even more about his response to Iran's actions and what he plans to do about it. David, I believe we are about to hear some of that directly from the president.
This is the president in the Oval Office moments ago.
The drone was in international waters. Clearly, we have it all documented. It's documented scientifically, not just words. And they made a very bad mistake.
How will you respond, Mr. President? How will you respond?
You'll find out.
Are you willing to go to war with Iran?
You'll find out. You'll find out. I mean, obviously, you know, we're not going to be talking too much about it. You're going to find out. They made a very big mistake.
Mr. President, what are your concerns about China and the Canadians who are detained, sir?
No concerns. We'll be discussing that. It'll be one of the issues I think we'll be discussing right now with Justin.
Mr. President, the Fed made no change to the interest rate.
Say it?
The Fed made no change to the interest rates, right?
Well, I guess they indicated they're going to be lower. He should have done sooner, but what are you going to do? Can't win them all. He should have done it sooner, but you can't win it all. And eventually he'll do what's right, perhaps. Let's see what he does.
When you ask China to release the Canadians, sir, when you ask China to release the Canadians, do you intend to bring them up when you meet with the
Obviously,
president?
we're very concerned about the escalation by Iran recently. We have significant presence in the area, including leading on the NATO mission in Baghdad, in Iraq. We look forward to discussing with our closest ally their perspectives on this and how we can move forward as an international community.
Will you ask China to release the Canadians, sir?
Meeting with Xi Jinping. Will you help Justin Trudeau get a meeting with Xi Jinping at the G20 next week to talk about the detained?
Well, I don't know that he's trying to meet. Are you trying to get a meeting?
We've got a lot of things to discuss.
Well, otherwise I'll represent him well. I will tell you. We have a meeting set up with President Xi, and it's
President Trump in the Oval Office just moments ago. You heard the president say he thinks Iran shooting down that U.S. drone may have been a mistake in his words. He said it may have been someone under command of Iranian government who made a mistake. I find it hard to believe that it was intentional, adding it could have been somebody who was loose and stupid. Let's get to our chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, because it would seem from those words right there, Martha, that the president is offering some sort of a window here to perhaps to bring down this escalation.
He may be trying to do that, but Iran is ramping it right back up, as you mentioned. And the foreign minister, Zarif, tweeted just a short time ago, the U.S. wages economic terrorism on Iran and has conducted covert action and now encroaches on our territory, saying we'll take this new aggression to the UN and show that the U.S. is lying about international waters. They said from the moment their surface-to-air missile hit our very sophisticated drone that it was in Iranian territorial waters. But you heard the president, you heard the commander in Qatar saying quite firmly that is not true and that they've made a big mistake. The commander in Qatar saying this is dangerous and escalatory action. So we're getting a lot of different messages today. But as you know, David, the president has been very firm about Iran. Over the years, he has been in office saying it's a country of terror and he will not take it.
I want to underscore that key point you made there, Martha, that Iran says this was not over international waters. It was over their airspace. The U.S. very clear this morning in that statement from the Pentagon, from the region, saying that was not the case and that this drone fell down into international waters and that it could have put lives in danger. I want to bring in our senior White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega, because we know as soon as the White House heard about this last night about 7:30 Eastern time, they did convene members of the security team with the president.
Yeah, they were reportedly, David, so concerned about what had happened that they convened this meeting in the evening. And Sarah Sanders confirmed that that meeting had happened. We now know that the president has been briefed at least twice, this morning and last night. There have been a number of briefings, frankly, that have been happening. The National Security Council, very high senior level officials in that group met at the White House this morning. That included the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joseph Dunford. Congressional leaders from both parties have been briefed on this. But, you know, David, you were just saying this is a real test for President Trump right now, that he will have to make a decision as to what to do. It seems from his comments that he just gave in the White House that he is leaving a little bit of an opening with Iran. We also know that he has a number of hawks in his administration, senior level hawks who have advocated for attacks on Iran in recent history. The president himself has vacillated a little bit. He has said he does not want to see war with Iran or war again in the Middle East. But I think at this point we have to wait to see what he's going to do on this. You hear his military leaders saying dangerous and escalatory attacks.
And you speak of the hawks in the administration. He also has allies over on the Hill. Senator Lindsey Graham, for one. Cecilia said we're a lot closer today than we were yesterday, and only God knows what tomorrow brings. Senator Graham saying that the U.S. would protect Israel, and if the U.S. goes to war with Iran, that he is confident that Iran would win. Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, has also talked this morning, saying there is no appetite for going to war. I think it's a dangerous situation. Let's make sure that we don't have the beating of the drum for something without the clarity of the facts involved. So let's bring in Mary Bruce, our congressional correspondent, who is at the White House this morning. And Mary, two very different statements from Lindsey Graham and Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, David, and the president has been getting even some mixed messages from within his own party on what should come next here. While our team has been speaking with many top Republicans on the Hill who are urging caution against the use of force, you mentioned those more hawkish Republicans like Senator Lindsey Graham coming out and saying that it would be appropriate for the U.S. to use military force. And he's been encouraging forceful action. The reason that is so significant, David, is that Lindsey Graham is one of those key players on the Hill who really has the president's ear. And we heard from him just a short while ago saying that this entire situation presents a test to the president, that he will be judged by what he does next. There is no doubt that the president, I'm sure, is listening closely to those messages that he's getting from his allies on the Hill.
Yeah, varied messages from over on the Hill. Mary, talking about Senator Lindsey Graham moments ago. In fact, he talked about the past, President Obama, the previous administration, and their discussions of a red line in Syria, and said, let's not make the same mistake this time, in so many words, putting some pressure on the president to take a very close look at what he's witnessing from Iran. Let's listen to Senator Graham just moments ago. Here's what he said.
Trump has told the Iranians, you cannot disrupt navigation of the seas, you can't attack our interests or our allies. That's an unacceptable way to live in the 21st century. They are testing him. They need to do so at their own peril. If they get away with this, God help us with North Korea and throughout the world. I'm convinced that as a last resort, President Trump will stop this behavior.
Are you saying that
That's Senator Lindsey Graham just moments ago. I want to bring in our global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, again. And Martha, all of this playing out amid these rising tensions and a need for leadership at the top of the Pentagon. Several roles remain unfilled, unconfirmed by the Senate. And we had the acting Pentagon chief reveal that he was out just a couple of days ago. And Martha, let's look at this video just in. This is from the Pentagon. They said this would offer an illustration of perhaps of what they saw in the last 24 hours. And again, as you're watching us here this afternoon, we are following breaking coverage of the White House and its decision-making process after we learned a surveillance mission, a drone, was shot down by a surface-to-air missile from Iran, taking down a U.S. Navy drone. The Pentagon today saying this was an unprovoked attack, that this surface-to-air missile was inside Iran. This was an effort, they say, to disrupt surveillance of aircraft in the Strait of Hormuz. And as you know, we've been reporting here at length about those oil ships that had been attacked. The U.S. saying they have evidence, in fact, that it was the Iranians. They showed that video previously of what appeared to be Iranian ships taking away some of the debris from the mine, the explosions in the waters there. The Pentagon making it clear this morning that they say this drone was a significant distance from the Iranian coastline, and they called the attack irresponsible and that it could have put lives in danger. But back to that point, Martha, that I made a moment ago, leadership issues at the top of the Pentagon, and these come at a very, very serious time for the administration.
They certainly do. And you have acting Defense Secretary Pat Shanahan and soon-to-be Acting Defense Secretary Mark Esper. That will begin this weekend on Sunday on this handoff right in the middle of what's going on right now. And we should remember that 4 tankers were attacked about a month ago in the Gulf, and that we have sent 25 or are sending 2,500 additional forces to the area, additional Patriot missile batteries, additional fighter aircraft. This was all before this happened. This was something that Central Command wanted for force protection. I'm sure that drone was part of that surveillance and that sort of force protection. And also a reminder of how sophisticated that drone is, David. That drone cost more than $120 million, was flying, they said, at about 34,000 kilometers. They say, and we'll have to keep on this, that it was in international waters, and they are certain about that no matter what the Iranians say.
And of course, that's the distinction being disputed by the Iranians, leading to this moment that we're now watching play out with you all at home today. And this, as Martha points out, was an unmanned aircraft. It cost more than $100 million. It was a Boeing, let me give you an idea, the wingspan, larger than a Boeing 737, just the size and scope of these drones. So often we think of the drones as much smaller. This was a major piece of equipment in the air at a cost of more than $100 million. And it was in the air precisely because of what you heard Martha say there, because of those attacks on oil ships in the region. I want to bring back in Cecilia Vega, because another key point here has been the effort to present evidence not only to the American people, but to the global audience listening and watching this very closely, world leaders. Many had signaled that there wasn't enough evidence, that they weren't comfortable yet, that the Iranians were definitely behind what we saw with those oil ships in recent days. We heard something a little different from Angela Merkel in the last 24 hours, the German chancellor, but big questions about whether or not they have a coalition should they take this a step forward.
And I think this is something that we've been talking about for a long time now. What will happen when the United States has a very serious international decision to make, like whether to strike on another country when credibility is on the line? And I think a lot of the president's critics would say that is certainly the case in these questions about Iran. I'm just going back to thinking back to what the president just said in the Oval Office, that he finds it hard to believe that if it was intentional, he said this, he believes that this could have been somebody loose and stupid. David, that's not what Iran is saying. Iran themselves are saying shooting down the American spy drone had a clear, decisive, firm, and accurate message. So I think some of those questions that we have been hearing leading up to today, we will continue to hear into tomorrow.
Clear dispute. Senator Lindsey Graham, I mentioned a moment ago that he spoke to reporters. You saw a little portion of that, but he went on to say that the president does not want war with Iran. As you know, we reported here the Japanese prime minister had been sent to Iran, was asked by the president, for Prime Minister Abe, to deliver a message to the Iranians to talk, to re-engage in some sort of negotiation, in some sort of diplomatic effort. And I have a little more from the president in the Oval Office moments ago, a hint perhaps that they are giving the Iranians some room here before any steps are taken. Let's listen.
I don't know. I find it hard to believe it was intentional, if you want to know the truth. I think that it could have been somebody who was loose and stupid that did it. We'll be able to report back, and you'll understand exactly what happened. But it was a very foolish move. That I can tell you.
The president suggesting it might have been someone loose and stupid, as I had mentioned earlier. As we all know, the president did tweet this morning, the Iranians reacting to the president's tweet, but that tweet came at 10:15 this morning. Iran made a very big mistake, and Senator Graham was asked about what the president had tweeted, asking, is that provoking the Iranians? And he said, no, what's provocative is to shoot down a drone. And again, as we continue to hammer home this morning, the difference here is the Iranians said that drone that was shot down was over Iranian airspace and not international waters. As we heard from the U.S. Navy, the Pentagon this morning, they say that clearly was not true, and that when the drone in fact came down and hit the water, it was in international waters, and they point out it could have put people in danger. We'll continue to follow this situation very closely throughout the day. Late news on ABC News Digital, live all afternoon, abcnews.com, and of course our entire team you just saw here will be on World News Tonight.
And you're watching ABC.
I'll see you then. Good day.
And you're watching ABC News Live, continuing coverage here of the president's remarks on Iran as the standoff with Iran reaches a crisis stage. Our Deputy Political Director, Mary Alice Parks, is here. I'm Devin Dwyer, Washington. Great to have you with us. So much to unpack here as the president shows uncharacteristic restraint towards Iran after issuing some bold threats that any U.S. assets being attacked would prompt a bold and swift response. The president saying here that it's hard to believe that drone, which you're seeing pictures of, shot down the last 24 hours was intentional. The president suggesting perhaps it was an accident, giving a little bit of room there. Mary Alice, I think some of the politics of this moment also are important to keep in mind as context here. The president is sort of feeling being pulled in two directions. On the one hand, he's always tried to take a hard line towards Iran. On the other hand, this is a president who said very clearly he doesn't want to get the United States involved in another war in the Middle East.
We've been talking a lot here in Washington about how the hardliners seem to be the ones left in the White House and in his ear. People like John Bolton, who have been quicker to talk about it, taking a strong approach. Even Lindsey Graham, obviously a close ally and friend from Capitol Hill, who was talking today about how this was such a strong provocation from Iran. But that seems to run counterintuitive to this president, who ran largely back in 2016 on wanting to pull troops home, really criticizing foreign wars, and ran very decisively on the war in Iraq being a mistake and wanting to scale back a troop footprint in the anywhere abroad, but really in the Middle East.
Yeah, and also a bit surprising in light of some of his allies, Lindsey Graham, Tom Cotton, and others who have very publicly and repeatedly been in his ear on this, that he needs to respond. Let's bring in our global affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz, for a little bit more. Martha, I just want to get your personal reaction as someone who has covered this story and this standoff so extensively. Are you surprised by the president's sort of restraint here, his suggestion that maybe this was a mistake?
Well, I think he's certainly trying to send a strong message to Iran. He is leaving himself a bit of an out. But as you know, the president sometimes says one thing on one hand and one thing on the other hand.
Right.
I think it's very important to go back and see how this all began. The president pulled out of the JCPOA, the nuclear deal, and started this maximum pressure campaign on Iran, thinking it would get Iran to the table. As you know, I was just there several weeks ago in Iran, and Iran was holding firm then, saying you cannot pressure us into doing something like that. But the economy, it is having a crippling effect on the economy in Iran, but clearly Iran has decided it will push back. You had those tanker attacks. We have not seen publicly any solid evidence that Iran did it, but we have seen a lot of circumstantial evidence. We have seen evidence of them taking off a mine, not putting on the mine, but Iran is holding firm, doubling down, and by shooting that drone out of the air. It is a true test for President Trump, who, despite what he said today, and believe me, we're all going to be going back and looking at all the statements he has made. Think of what he said about those sailors that were in a boat when President Obama, and that the Iranians held them for a while, and that they were on their knees, and that wouldn't happen if President Trump was president. So he has had very, very tough rhetoric against Iran, and that was before they shot down a drone.
Martha, the president there said that it could have been sort of a rogue general acting in Iran. Talk to us about who calls the shots in Iran. We've heard a lot of reporting that it's hard to know who's in charge. Does he have a point there? It
is. There could be rogue actors, but listen to what the foreign minister said. He said the U.S. wages economic terrorism on Iran, has conducted covert action against us, and now encroaches on our territory. As soon as that drone was shot down, Iran was saying it was over their territorial waters. There was no sort of statement, oh, wait, this might be a rogue, let us check. He said, we'll take this new aggression to the UN and show that this is Zarif, the foreign minister, and show that the U.S. is lying about international waters. So they are certainly not trying to move the blame to some rogue action.
And let's bring in Mary Bruce into the conversation, our senior congressional correspondent. She's been tracking what lawmakers are saying about this standoff with Iran. Mary, you know, aside from Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton, some of the Iran hawks, what is the appetite up there more broadly to responding to something like this? This is an attack on a U.S. asset.
Well, there is very little appetite to respond militarily from a lot of people that we have spoken with. Obviously, Leader Pelosi has been urging caution. We heard her earlier today saying there is no appetite for war. And even many top Republicans have been urging caution here when asked about how the president would respond, saying that now is the time to up the pressure, to use a maximum pressure campaign, but not to be taking further military action. Of course, the issue is that that's not the message that's being sent by so many of those hawkish Republicans who are the members of Congress who have the president's ear. When you speak about Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton, their voice is so important because they're the ones that the president listens most closely to. So when you have Lindsey Graham coming out and encouraging forceful action, when he is telling the president that this is a test for him, that is Lindsey Graham telegraphing to the president through the media, saying that the president should be essentially on high alert for the fact that his action and his response to this is one of those moments that could be, go down in history books when it comes to the way that this president has handled these kind of foreign relations and these kinds of tests. So Lindsey Graham is sending a very clear message to the president, and it is not necessarily a message that is in line with other top Republicans.
And we know that those top Republicans, along with top Democrats, including Speaker Pelosi, we're just learning from our Trish Turner, will be coming to the White House, where you are, Mary, this afternoon for a 3 o'clock classified briefing with President Trump on the situation. So it sounds like there are further discussions underway. And Martha Raddatz, a response not being taken off the table, even as President Trump exercises some restraint here. It seems from some of your analysis and your reporting that there could be a lot of concern about indirect attacks and responses by Iran. They have a pretty vast network around the world, right?
Yeah, we're always concerned about Iranian proxies and how someone could carry out attacks. We have a lot of U.S. forces in the region, as you know, and we've just sent, or in the process of sending, about 2,500 more Patriot missile batteries. We have more fighter jets. We have B-52 bombers, and we have an aircraft carrier strike group in the region as well. You also have right now, and this is very important, you do have the U.S. military looking for the debris from that drone, because the last thing they want is for the Iranians to get bits and pieces of that drone and any intelligence it might have on it, or any sort of classified equipment from this highly sophisticated drone. You also had the embassy in Baghdad evacuated. Hundreds of people evacuated, the non-emergency personnel, as they are called, because of unspecified threats in the region. You had 2 rockets hit in an oil drilling housing facility just yesterday. There was no blame placed on that, but you can be sure that the U.S. is looking at Iran for that as well, and Iranian proxies in Iraq carrying out those attacks.
A very dangerous situation for sure. Will continue the next few days as this standoff continues. Martha Raddatz, thanks so much for sticking around, Martha, for your analysis. Much more from her on World News tonight. We should say that drone, which was shot down, $120 million surveillance drone, the Pentagon just saying a short time ago that it was over international waters, and they just released this video. We're trying to make it out. It does appear that squiggle at the top left of the screen there is the trail of the drone that it left in the sky as it was shot down. But the Pentagon putting out some footage of the incident, which happened overnight. And the big headline here, Mary Alice, the president saying he believes that this perhaps could be an accident, a rogue general or something inside Iran. In his words, hard to believe it was intentional, showing some restraint.
But he did say, we'll see. He was asked repeatedly there in the room by reporters what the response will be. And he hedged. He did say, we'll see. And clearly some very strong words from the Pentagon.
This is now likely to be a topic, too, in the debate next week. Foreign policy, usually not front and center in some of these Democratic and Republican primary debates, but now it's almost certain to come up.
Right, and you can imagine a scenario that really benefits Joe Biden, a former vice president who was actively engaged in defending the original Iran deal that the Obama administration was a part of. It also could make Joe Biden look a little stately, the sort of the elder statesman on that stage in a moment like this. But it might also make Democrats really look on the defensive. It is hard to run against a sitting president for exactly this reason. They're the ones in the White House. They're the ones in the Situation Room. They're the commander-in-chief.
Yeah, so we will see where that debate goes just a few days away. Mary Alice, thanks for your political analysis. We'll have much more of the political conversation and the fallout from this standoff with Iran coming up at 3:30 Eastern Time here on ABC News Live in the briefing room, along with other political headlines of the day. For now, for Mary Alice, I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington. Thanks for watching our special coverage.